Hello and welcome to the CDAO Magazine interview series. I'm Jake Dreier with HiLabs, and we are partnering with CDAO Magazine, MIT CDAO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. Today, I have the pleasure with speaking to Himanshu Arora, the Chief Data and Analytics Officer of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. Himanshu, welcome.
Thank you, Jake. Pleasure to be here.
Do you have other examples of areas where you've been able to see incremental or immediate change, or areas that you would are interested in exploring in seeing how you could leverage incremental and immediate changes to data analytics, which impact the member experience?
Yeah, great question. So sticking with sort of the lane of member experience, one of the, and in hindsight, this looks like such a simple thing, but it was very impactful in sort of proving out the utility of the capability. One of the first things we started with was trying to understand when a member shows up for care, what are the typical causes or the lead up and things that technically we should be able to look at the data in advance, analyze it, model it, and be able to predict with a reasonable degree of certainty what are the cases through which a member experiences a cost surprise, right? And we've all been there. You go in for a PCP visit, assuming or thinking that this is part of the covered care, and they end up performing a test, for example, that turns out down the line, right, sort of after the fact retrospectively was not covered, and then you end up paying for it out of pocket or some share for it out of pocket. Now, is it the right thing by the benefit design? Yes. But as a member, were you surprised by it? Also, yes. Right. Mm-hmm. So we looked at some of those basic things and said, where are our members experiencing cost surprises? And we leveraged our call center data, our survey data to understand the where and the how. How are they expressing it? How do we find out about these things? And then going back and looking at our data and saying, okay, this is a point in time, for example, when a member is scheduling care or reaching out to us to help them schedule care with a provider, what are things that we can counsel them on, guide them on, work with them to educate them? But then on the other side, what are things we need to work with providers on, right? To make sure, because from a provider's perspective too, they're also trying to do the right thing. A member's in for care. And now we are in a much more balance of in-person and virtual world, but particularly at the time, if a member is presenting for care at a location, they've already gone through and taken up a good degree of inconvenience to do so. Let me run these 2, 3, 4 extra tests as well. Set the expectation up front. But then what can we do? And again, from a sophistication of data and analytics perspective, not that hard to do, right? But the impact that it created and the momentum that it created and the aha moments that it created was very helpful. Now, when we look at farther out on the member experience spectrum, what I'm most excited about is bringing into sharper relief those aspects of member experience that actually literally what we call create joy, and pushing more to the background or behind the curtain, if you will, all of the complexity that has to be dealt with, right? And to state the obvious, the more complex the care an individual's trying to get, the more complexity there is in arranging for that care, getting that care, follow through and follow up on that care after the fact. And that's where I think some of the most exciting opportunities are in combining clinical data that we know about a member, and therefore being predictive about what healthcare pathways are best for them, and being able to guide them, counsel them, coach them accordingly, combining their healthcare data to understand what choices and preferences they are expressing to us in terms of, do I prefer virtual care or in-person care? When I'm choosing or selecting plans, do I prefer to pay a higher premium out of pocket or higher out of pocket cost at the time of point of care, right? So those clinical plus all aspects of healthcare, but then also increasingly, right, what's increasingly unlocking more and more insights for us from the clinical and the claims/financial data, membership data, product plan data, is external consumer behavior data, right? We are all sum of so many aspects of our life that limiting our lens just to healthcare is reductive. And we don't need to be, neither do we want to be that reductive. How are members choosing to get care or choosing to obtain services in other aspects of their lives and learning from those and using those aspects to be predictive. Combining that, creating a 360-degree view of the member, knowing, for example, all the things I mentioned, what are their preferences for place, time, type, and financing, for example, of care, right? Out of pocket, premium, etc. That's where we are headed to. That's the journey that we are on, and in working with our chief consumer experience officer, chief technology officer, a select select few partners from outside the organization. That's an end-to-end experience that we're looking to create. And stay tuned.
So I love the way that you framed the need to have this 360 view of a patient, and
Yeah.
you've had a few I think great ways to describe what entails this 360 view. You use the word cool and useful, incremental and immediate, and especially when we think about AI and ML, there is so much noise in the space of AI, ML solutions and how it will permeate and change almost every aspect of the healthcare field. So given all that noise, I would love to hear from you, how do you consider new applications? What are the things that you keep top of mind when you are thinking about implementing AI, ML, or any other advanced technology, advanced data solution to the things that your team uses?
Yeah, very good point. I think first sort of step for myself, and I've learned this from our other practitioners in the space as well, is the need to stay up to date, the need to stay aware of what are the latest developments taking place in the space of AI and machine learning more broadly, not just healthcare, and sort of staying humble about the idea that, look, most of the advances in the actual underlying technology, the techniques, and the methods is more likely than not going to come from outside of the industry, at least outside of the company, right? And then it becomes a question of constantly trying to match those capabilities back with developing or on the anvil use cases that we're trying to solve for, right? So, for example, how do we start to combine digital case management, in which a care management coordinator or a nurse is trying to guide a individual member through their best healthcare journey, and now starting to combine with AI ML tools that are available out there, which do a lot of pre-processing, but then also predictive analytics, and can help create a journey for them more. And I know the word AI is thrown around very liberally in healthcare. There was good bit of discussion at this at a conference we were at last week as well, where AI is still very nascent, particularly when it comes to healthcare, and that's okay, right? We're still in very early phases of this, but then constantly sort of thinking through and saying, okay, here's a problem I'm trying to solve for, or a business challenge I'm trying to address, and here are some options around what new platforms are available out there, what new methods somebody has come up with, and trying to create constant matching. Now, all of this is good if we can convert this from sort of thoughtware and paperware into at least small mini experiments, proof of concepts, proof of values, right? So that's something we are constantly doing when we have a couple of them underway even right now, is we're testing out the proof of value to say, okay, A, does the underlying technology work? But that's less of a focus. A lot of that vetting has been done beforehand. But as we apply the underlying technology and the output that's produced, how ready are our processes, our systems, and our people to start to take that and apply it, right? Now, AI in healthcare, the other aspect of this is we have to be very cognizant and very careful about letting black box AI be the answer for any of what we're trying to do in healthcare. Particularly so because not just from a regulatory perspective, but at the end of the day, can we fairly argue that a person's health is their most valuable asset? And you don't want to tell them yes or no based on a black box because quote unquote the AI said so, right? So that explainability aspect, I would venture to guess that the explainability aspect will generally imply that the most forward use of AI will happen first outside of healthcare, and then those techniques and methods will be adopted into healthcare. Even when we look at, for example, image recognition and AI algorithms reading X-rays and other similar um, scopes and things, and trying to come up with a predictor, radiology is another great example of this. It's been proven already that AI can identify, for example, developing tumors much more ahead of time before the human eye can, right? And so absolutely, we have to apply, because there we are applying AI to identify a health risk for a member and get them on the right path, do it as early as possible, and everything becomes subservient to that. Where we have to be careful is when we start to take black box AI and say, you, the individual, qualify for this program, product, rate, price, whatever, and you, the individual, don't. That's where I think there's a lot more explainability that's required. Those are areas where I tend to be more skeptical, not skeptical per se, but more skeptical when it comes to applying the use cases within AI.
Thank you for sharing that, Himanshu. And that's a great way to close this out. So for those of you listening, I've been speaking with Himanshu Arora, the Chief Data and Analytics Officer of Blue Cross Blue Shield, Massachusetts. Himanshu, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Jake. This is awesome.
Yeah, if you're interested in seeing additional interviews, please visit cdomagazine.tech. And thank you so much for joining us today.